Hello there, guys. Welcome back to another episode of E&Ftv. Today, we are joined by my very good friend, Danica Smith. Danica, hello. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm so pleased to finally be here. We've been talking about this a while, so I'm really excited. I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to finally get you on the show. We've spoken about it a little while ago, but I remember when I messaged you because I was like, "You're on my list. Are you up for it?" And you were like, "Yes."
No, my response was, "You're on my list too." So yeah, thanks, Tom, for having
I'm
me.
no, I'm so glad to have you with us. I'm so glad to have you with us. And of course, by the time this goes out, congratulations, because you've now been promoted to Global Director of Partnerships at Shiji.
Thank you.
So very happy to share that with everybody.
An
What we're
exclusive.
looking, well, yeah, exactly. Bit of exclusive there, guys. What I'm eager to talk to you about today is, of course, the guest experience. That's
Yeah,
that's something that you're incredibly passionate about. You've spoken
yeah,
about it at many conferences, many events, and it's something that, in fact, we've never had on the show. It's something that I spoke to you previously.
yeah,
We've never had this subject on the show, and I think more and more it's being spoken about, and quite rightly so.
yeah,
We're also going to touch on a bit of F&B, the optimization of that through data and the
yeah.
guest experience side of things as well. Um, so before I do that, before we jump in, before we get into it, to everybody watching, please don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you content every single week with fantastic guests, just like Danica. And we can't do that without a fantastic community around us. So please do, if you are watching this, if you're enjoying the episodes, subscribe to the channel, join the community, and let us know what you think in the comments below of this episode, or what you're experiencing from a guest experience perspective, or what you're seeing in terms of data from an F&B perspective. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So, Danica, let's start. Let's get into it. So, the
Cool.
first thing I'd love to hear about is, for anyone that doesn't know you, and I can't imagine there's that many people out there, can you
Sure.
give us a bit of information about your background, what brought you
Sure.
to where you are now, and I suppose what it is that you do now within Shiji?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, like we're so lucky to work in this industry, aren't we? And
Yeah.
I am so privileged to get to work with our industry. You go to
Yeah.
any event and you just
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
away feeling on cloud nine. So if anybody's listening to this that's thinking about entering, like absolutely, it's a must to
Love that.
work
Yeah.
in hospitality, whether it's, in hotels, in, travel, technology, whatever it is, we have the
Yeah.
best. So my background is marketing. So I
Hmm.
studied a BA honors marketing degree, always wanted to work in marketing. Didn't even think of hospitality as an industry, was never kind of
Really?
ever, didn't, I loved going to hotels and I've always,
Of course.
ironically, loved staying in hotels and loved the guest experience, but never at the age of 19, 20, ever thought of it as a career.
Sure. Sure.
Started out working in marketing, was working for a marketing agency, landed my dream job,
Yeah.
realized, so I'm dyslexic. So I have really good attention to detail, but my spelling is horrendous. I
Right.
usually get my mum to spell check anything important. So sorry for spelling mistakes on LinkedIn, guys. um, and didn't really ever think anything of it. And I landed this job. So I was like, I think I was 22, and I was an account manager for a really successful marketing agency. And I
Yeah.
realized this is just not the career for me. Like, if you're dyslexic and you
Wow.
struggle with spelling, you really
Of
cannot be
course.
working for a high intense marketing
Of
agency.
course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, agency life's not for me. And then I found a job at Apex Hotels.
Yeah.
So shout out to them. They really opened the door and I joined them. I think I was a marketing assistant at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, not really understanding hotels. This was 2011. So social media was really beginning to become a thing for businesses. And I
Sure.
really liked what they were then doing with the rubber ducks on social media.
Hmm.
And I was really lucky because whilst the head office was and still is based in Edinburgh, I was based on property in
Love
London
that.
at the three London hotels. So that was
Yeah.
where, whilst I was a head office, function in marketing, I fell
Yeah.
in love with operations, would
Hmm.
often have to be pulled into operations. I would be the bread basket girl at lunchtime when it was busy in the
Yeah.
restaurants and
Yeah.
help housekeeping. So I felt like that was like the perfect training ground to kind of understand ops and close the gap between what was happening in the hotels with head office. And
Yeah.
kind of been the theme of what I've been doing, in different roles for the last 12, 13 years.
Yeah. And I was gonna say I didn't even think about the dyslexia and with the marketing
Yeah.
side until you just because I was thinking to myself, wow, okay, great. And then
Yeah.
that makes total sense. The
Yeah.
one thing that everybody says, bar none, is that the experience of working on property
Yeah.
is transformative.
Yes.
And I know from working way back when in conference services, and I was talking to Harry Murray, chairman of HOSPA, at a lunch, and I remember him saying about how he used to turn rooms around in between
Mhm.
different meetings and whatever. And I was like, it's so true because you're under pressure, you're talking to people all the time, but when it's all hands on deck, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
If you get a big coach of people arrive, you get on the radio and everyone's saying, right, everyone needs to help with bags to rooms, get down here quick.
Yeah.
And you don't quite understand it unless you lived it.
No,
You know what I
no,
mean?
no.
And
And it
it's
was
so
like,
true.
and it's the same as, like hotel. So at my time at Apex Hotels, I had the privilege of working with the team, opening 3 properties,
Right.
2 of which I was based at property. So that was so
Yeah.
exciting. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
third, I'd moved to Edinburgh and was working from the head office. And the difference in those experiences, when you're on property and
Yeah.
you are polishing cutlery because doors are opening in 3 hours time, is totally
Mm,
different to when, you're checking an events list from the head office. So I feel really grateful. And when my time at Apex Hotels, I had, a number of different roles. We were a client of Review Pros, of Shiji Review Pro.
right.
That was where I fell in love with online reputation and had a really supportive boss.
Interesting.
And Angela Vickers, the CEO at the time, super supportive. And that was when I created a role of, I think it was PR and online reputation manager at Apex
Yeah.
Hotels. And it was using my ops experience, combining the commercial marketing function to really help give that strategy to the company at the time. And that was where I
Right.
fell in love with guest experience and realized how important it is to your whole commercial strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's one of those where we're seeing this in so many conversations at so many conferences, at every
Yeah.
event, we're all talking about guest experience. And I suppose obviously that's something that, as I said at the start of this, that you're so passionate about.
Yeah.
What have you seen from your perspective in the market that you're in, from a guest experience perspective over the last 3 years? What have been the main changes that you've seen?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, but it's so funny because from my perspective at conferences, we don't talk about the guest experience enough.
Right.
So I'm very lucky we work with such a broad range of clients at Shiji Review Pro. And so I get to speak at lots of different GMs conferences. And
Sure.
often when I'm there, I get to sit in and listen to the rest of the GM's conference. So, you'll have HR, procurement, ops director, commercials talking. And it's so strange to me that the word guest
Mm.
sometimes will not be referenced for 5 hours. And,
Wow.
and it's
Okay.
sometimes the same at conferences. We talk a lot about technology or
Yeah.
strategies or, how do we recruit people into our industry or whatever
Mhm.
the amazing topics are. But sometimes when you actually listen to the word guest and how many times guest is
Yeah.
referenced, coming from a very biased point of view, I'm like, it's not enough. So just wanted to put that side note out there.
I was going
So
to say, so you're really flying the flag for this, really?
yeah, because it doesn't really matter what your strategy is as a
Mm.
hotelier or an accommodation provider. If you don't have happy guests,
Yeah.
it's irrelevant, really. So yeah, I'm always bringing
Fair.
it back to the guest.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so just wanted to put that out there. Let's not forget, for all of the commercial listeners, like please remember, what's happening with your guests. And it's easily said than done, because it's
Mm.
obvious, but so many times people will move away and get stuck into their day to day, which might be, you know, if you're revenues, you're in your numbers, if you're IT, you're in technology vendor world, you know, if you're in marketing, you're in the digital changes with AI and PPC and SEO, you can easily forget what is actually about the guest. So that's why I'm flying the flag.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But to answer your actual question, Tom,
The main changes.
the main changes over the last 3 years. And wow, what a 3 years it's been. And
yeah,
also for all the hoteliers listening, I don't think people get enough credit for the survival mode that hoteliers have gone through over the last 4 years now. You know, from COVID straight into staff shortages, straight into, you know, the world of technology. It's been insane. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm in awe of our clients, of GMs that are running a business with less resource, less people, and higher demands. So coming back to the change, if we look at what the data is telling us, and if we look at kind of pre-COVID, and actually from 2022 to 2023 to this year, when we look at the world of reputation management, so online reputation, what's happening with the big review sites, Google, Booking, TripAdvisor, Expedia, hotels.com, and what's that doing to my online reputation? The relationship between Google, TripAdvisor, and Expedia and Booking.com in terms of reviews is so interesting. So I'm going to ask you a question, Tom. You're not from this world as such.
Sure.
So on a sample size of 10,000 properties worldwide across 3, 4, 5-star segment, what percentage in 2023 do you think Booking.com and Google accounted for in terms of review volume?
Oh my
So if I was to say, for all the reviews in 2023, what percentage would you say those two sites account for? Bearing in mind, you've got TripAdvisor, Expedia,
I was going to say, because those are the two big ones, aren't they? I want to say like 50, 60%, something like that.
71%. 71% of all reviews came, well, on a sample size of 10,000, came from Booking.com and Google. And depending on where that's globally. When you're in EMEA, it's a lot more. In EMEA, Google, Booking.com accounts for around about 69% of total review volume. US, it's slightly lower, but globally, Booking.com and Google account for 70%.
Wow.
So what that does to the mind of investors, GMs, where we have been conditioned to think about TripAdvisor, and can be quite confusing of like, what does my review distribution mean to my reputation? So that's kind of like one huge trend we've seen. The landscape of reviews and how that shifts. But I always like to say, you know, what happens if Instagram decides to do reviews tomorrow? You know? I might book on booking.com and leave a review on booking.com, but who's not to say I'm not looking at your TripAdvisor page? So, you know, it's really important that hoteliers, whether you're commercial, operations, investment, whoever, you're always understanding, you know, the relationship between those sources. So that's review distribution, huge change. The other thing that's really changed is the actual sentiment of the guest experience. So we are still not as satisfied as we were pre-COVID. So at Shiji Review Pro, we have what's called the GRI, the Global Review Index. It's really become the benchmark of understanding online reputation. It's an algorithm. We're crunching 145 review sources. And we put weighting on frequency, quality, regency, etc. Can't give away the secrets of the algorithm. But it's really understanding how is my property, my portfolio, and my competitors performing across all review sites. So in 2029, the Global Review Index on this sample size of 10,000 hotels sat at 86%. 2023, it was 85.4. So we still have not recovered. Now that might not sound, you know, like 0.6 difference. It might not sound a lot, but for all of you revenue and commercial listeners, we did a huge research study with Cornell University and STR. So we know that every 1% increase in the GRI, in your guest satisfaction, it equates to a 1.4% in RevPAR, a 0.8% in occupancy, 0.5% in ADR. Now, if I am the one and only or Belmont Hotels, you know, increase of 0.5% makes a huge difference on my revenues and commercials. So, you know, as an industry, we are still not at the satisfaction that we were in 2019.
Right.
So that's interesting. And when we break down into, okay, well, why? What areas of the guest experience are impacting it? Room is the number one. The category that is negatively impacting the GRI. So whenever anybody is saying something negative about the room experience, it's taken off 1.8 off the GRI. So that's a huge amount of that's impacting your RevPAR potentially. Now the change, it's always been room. Room has always been the biggest negative factor, but global warming. The change, the biggest driver for room negative mentions is air conditioning. That was not the case in 2019. So, and that doesn't matter if you're a 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star. Air conditioning is accountable for the majority or the biggest impact of negative mentions, and is what is negatively impacting the guest experience. So that's a real shift, and you know, of how, you know, NASA, according to NASA, you know, the summer of 2023 was the hottest on record. That continues to change. We saw this trend in 2022. Many hotel brands decided to not invest in air conditioning units or didn't take it seriously. It continues to be an issue in 2023. And I'm sure it's going to have the same impact as we enter the summer in 2024. The difference is the brands that have decided to invest their CapEx investment on what impacts the guest experience are the ones that are going to win.
But we said this about reviewing tech stacks during the pandemic. Was those that were at least reviewing and looking at what was in their tech stack, what they were able to achieve, and also looking at their, from a guest experience package perspective, those were the ones that ended up way better off. And coming out of the pandemic, they were able to get back on their feet quicker. Of course, it's the same. It's not about who's there first. It's about who sees that opportunity and acts on it, right? And it, you know, not everyone's going to have the budget. I get that, whatever. But if you do that, if that's the number one telling, and the data's there to tell you that,
and
wow,
you're spot on, Tom, as well, because sometimes, like, what I love about my job is, you know, having access to such creative, strategic minds. There's a famous London property that had, you know, we could pinpoint with our technology exactly what was negatively impacting their guest experience, and it was the lift. They have a very slow lift, a very large building, and guests are complaining left, right, and center. I had a load of analysis. GM took it to the owners, took it to the board. Zero CapEx investment for the next 2 years. So the GM, what did she do? She set up on busiest time, Friday afternoons, Prosecco stands. She had a really cool make your own selfie picture tagger. Monitored it for 2 weeks.
Well thought.
Went back to the board and said, okay, if I'm not going to get CapEx for the lift, I need budget for this. So it's sometimes, you know, using data, okay, you might not get the capital investment that you're looking for, or the extra staff count, but what can you do, you know? And that's when it's super cool to see all of these GMs be really creative.
Do you know what? I think that was a lot. There's a lot of things that COVID and the pandemic did to our industry that were massively negative. There's no doubt about that. But what it did do is it created a necessity to be creative, to change, to drive things, because you couldn't survive otherwise. And I think, if I may be so bold, I think it gave many people in the industry maybe the kick that they needed from a leadership perspective, not the people on the ground doing the, you know, whatever, but I think that it did. And I think we were better off with a lesson learned in all these different ways that we needed to be creative. We needed to think differently. We needed to do
Yeah.
things rather than that's the way they've always been done. We had to flip stuff on its head.
Yeah.
And I love that story about that GM. I think that's
Got
absolutely brilliant.
hundreds of those stories as well where people
Oh,
have just did and the reality is that GM knows the data,
yeah,
knows the guests, and knows how to, do monitor how a change
yeah.
directly impacts the guest experience and use it to their advantage.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
If there's
Um,
any operational commercial leaders that had to get creative in the way that Danica just described, I'd love to hear them below in the comments below. Because
yes,
I
please.
imagine, I know you've got loads of stories, but I imagine there's so many people out there that
Yeah,
have just had to
yeah,
think on their feet. And
yeah,
yeah, you can imagine some of the stories that there must be out
yeah.
there.
But I must say, not to be negative, but that
Mm,
creativity and that like sheer grit that
yeah,
leaders had, unfortunately, 2023's revenue boom has kind of, I've seen so
yeah, yeah.
many GMs, so many C-suite hoteliers kind of be so complacent. If I've got a 4-star,
Right.
5-star luxury property or portfolio in a European city center, and my occupancy and my average daily rates are, through the roof,
Yeah,
that they've got some of them have got quite complacent when it comes to the guest experience.
yeah,
And I'm like, how is that going to see you through when we look at the new supply coming into the market, keeping your staff, and
yeah,
the guest experience. So I'm kind of like, now that we see that the market's slowing down a little bit, I'm like, come on, let's get back to that fighting for it, because
yeah,
it's not great when you see people just riding on their laurels. Is that the saying? Riding on their
yeah,
laurels of that
yeah.
revenue train, because it's not sustainable. It's really
No,
not sustainable.
when your back's up against the wall, that's when you see that true grit,
Mm-hmm.
that unrelenting need to achieve and
Yeah,
drive because you've
yeah,
got a team behind you, you've got all that. And maybe, yeah, well, you'll know better than anyone because you've got the data there. But when performance is up, is that when
yeah,
people take their foot off the gas?
yeah,
And,
yeah,
granted, in sales and recruitment, it's very easy to do that. After a really good month, you think, all right, take my foot
yeah,
off. But
yeah,
then you have a blank month and all of a sudden your back's up against the wall
yeah,
again.
yeah.
And I can imagine that must be so similar in this industry.
But it's so fascinating, and again, like, so grateful to work, because a lot of the time, like, so I will have what we call quarterly business review sessions with our
Sure.
clients, and I'll have one at 11 a.m. and then I'll have another one at 2 p.m. and they will be competing brands,
Yeah.
product like for like, positioning like for like, ownership same, very, very similar. And you'll have brand A saying, we're doing so well, we're not going to focus, we're canceling the GM's conference, we don't need
Yeah.
it. And brand B, we've had a fantastic year. What can we do more to continue to drive the guest experience?
Yeah.
And they're the ones that really are going to win in the perception of value argument, right?
Yep.
That,
Yep.
that's the difference. So it's just, and you must see this in recruitment as well, working with the different brands, how the strategies and the
Yeah.
ethos of that hotelier, are very different, that you don't realize when you're searching on their websites and choosing a hotel between.
No. It's very, yeah. I mean, from a consumer perspective, jumping onto the OTAs and looking at sort of
Yeah,
what's out there, because obviously as a consumer you have to be more savvy. Times are
yeah,
tighter and everything else. And those reviews are now from a pure consumer perspective more and more important now
yeah,
because you see what other people have said. The
yeah,
pictures might be gorgeous, the content might be amazing,
yeah,
but if your reviews are down and people are looking at them,
yeah,
move on
yeah,
to the next one.
yeah,
And I don't think, and this is me being completely honest here, because
of course, yeah,
I said to you before jumping on this, it's going to be a learning for me because I don't, just when you gave us those numbers,
yeah,
I don't think I gave it the attention or maybe the gravity of which the effect that it can actually have.
yeah,
I've spoken to lots of people working within that review space, and I've always thought, well, yeah, but it's a review, right?
yeah,
Go back to
yeah,
them in
yeah,
24
yeah, yeah,
hours,
yeah,
whatever. but the gravity in which the weight that they hold is,
Yeah.
I never thought that would be the case of the the magnitude that it is.
Yeah. And that's really where, my passion combining guest reputation and marketing together, because, working when I was back at at Apex Hotels. So it's 2012, online reputation was really important, but management response wasn't something that was really spoken about,
Right.
certainly not operationally. It wasn't really on
Sure.
anybody's agenda. And at the time, we had the 3 London properties, and we were at number 8, number 12, and I think number 17 of the best London hotels. So
Right.
incredible. And obviously, 2012 marketing, I'm all about the Book Direct campaign,
Yeah.
focusing on the website journey, trying to drive website traffic. And I looked at those 3 London properties, and it was the month of April 2012, so just before the Olympics.
Yeah.
And the website traffic that we were getting on those 3 London pages was almost double what our website was getting. And I was thinking,
Wow.
we're spending all of our focus, resource, energy, time on
Yeah.
website conversion. And yet here people are, credit card in hand, ready to book. They're either going to book my
Yeah.
hotel or another hotel, and we're ignoring it. So again, if anybody knows me, they're probably like, here Danica goes on her management response crusade. But it's true because it's so important. TripAdvisor's research, 68% of TripAdvisor's website traffic say they
Yeah.
will choose one property over another property solely based on the response.
Wow.
So important. Okay. So
And the speed of that response, but also what about because I can imagine, again, from a consumer perspective, if I did a review
yeah,
and it wasn't sort of a blatant complaint and all the rest of it, but it was just me giving some constructive feedback as to what the
yeah,
property did or couldn't do or whatever. If I got the response from a GM or some
yeah,
sort of leadership person, I know me, I'd feel like, wow, okay, that's really
yeah.
cool. I can imagine, is there any sort of data that shows that if it's from a certain person, it's received better than others, or does not
It's
really
a
work like that?
no, it's a really, really good question. And that really depends on, what Booking.com's strategy is in terms of management response is
Right.
very different to TripAdvisor's.
Okay.
TripAdvisor reviews are a big part of their business. Reviews are a small part of Booking.com's
Right.
income, shall we say.
Sure, sure.
But what it is about, if you look at Booking.com's model, for example, and I should caveat and say that this conversation is my own opinion. I should have started that.
little
This is
little clause
little
in
caveat. This is Danica Smith based on 10 years at working in the
we'll
industry.
put that in red writing at the start of the
Yeah,
episode. All opinions
all
are,
opinions are heard only. But shared with the industry, I think, because it's quite relevant. But I
sure.
believe, and Booking.com are always, as all of the giants, are always changing the UI. But the last time I knew this was as a guest in Booking.com, when I leave a review and that hotelier responds to me in the guest journey, it doesn't alert me.
Right,
So
right,
what that
okay.
tells us is that the review response is not for Tom, I'm sorry you had a bad thing, let me get back to you. It's
Yeah,
for the 10,000 people that are looking to book your hotel. And so we had a
interesting.
group of one of our clients, 72 properties worldwide. Fantastic product offering, wasn't really engaged in management response. We, looking at time, quality, strategy, what are your most important sources? We did this whole workshop with them and gave them a management response strategy. What was
Right,
interesting was, the response to time improved, their management response ratio improved, but their perception of value, the index for value improved.
right,
So, when we look at inflation costs, when we look at changes in preferences of diets, let's say I've decided to go organic with my F&B offering.
yeah,
When somebody complains that they've paid £30 for a breakfast in London, it's
yeah.
really important in that management response. I talk about the quality of ingredients,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's really cool. Same as room size, London hotels from the US, the majority of negative sentiment from US guests is the size
Not
of
big enough.
Juliet suites, of course.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't come to London to spend time in my bathroom, so talk about the luxurious amenities that you have in the
Sure.
bathroom. So that's where, like, strategically, management response can be used to support your marketing positioning, your perception of value, your differences, your ethos as a culture, so many different ways. However, going back to your first question, the change, unfortunately, pre-COVID, I used to say to hotels, 24 hours, 100% negative reviews across all sources.
Right.
It's just not realistic with staff shortage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's
Yeah.
really important that whoever's responding in your business is being strategic on how and what kind of reviews I should prioritize.
Right.
But with our data, I spoke to a service apartment chain, and they have apartments in all European city centres. I think they have over 100 properties. And have a guess what you think their average response time was to respond to reviews.
Well, the fact that I would said 24 hours earlier, and the fact that you've asked that question, I'm gonna not to be harsh, maybe to them, 48 hours.
12 days, 12.2 days average. There were some properties in Paris that were taking 32 days to respond. So again, and this is where it's just about education, right? It's like, great that you're responding to that guest, but if you are based in Berlin or Amsterdam or New York, Tokyo, Sydney, London, if you're not responding within 72 hours, personally, I recommend 48 if you're, really want to outperform your competitors, then nobody's going to look at that page 4 on TripAdvisor and read that response. So you're literally wasting your time. So again, like, using technology to help be efficient in what you're doing. And
the other thing to think about as well is that the future guests are the people that have everything at their fingertips all the time. So that response time the expectation is going to be that is just needs to be shorter and shorter and shorter, because everybody these days, you can have packages sent to your home within 24 hours. You can have a taxi come and get you through an app. You can have your food come to you everything is instant. Everything's right now. Everything's 5 minutes ago. Anybody that leaves a review and is waiting 12 days in the market that we're seeing now, but also 5, 10, 15 years down the line, those people have grown up with everything here now 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely.
They're not the ones that were still ringing up a hotel to book a room.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But even if you take, like, baby boomers, back to TripAdvisor's research of 68% will choose one property over another. If my mother's going to stay in Dublin and she sees 2 properties, one has a response and one doesn't, to mediate what hotel is she going to book? So it's very basic, but I think, and I could talk for years about reviews. But when we even then start to get into AI and what does a review, the kind of reviews that you want to see, traveling with your family might be very different to when you're traveling with business. So I was at the Booking.com conference, the Click conference in Amsterdam 2 weeks ago, and fascinating things that are coming out in our industry when it comes to personalization and how AI can really just escalate that.
I think that's going to be an episode in itself, and I think I would genuinely love to talk about that element. So let's look at that.
Let's come back to that one.
Yeah. I think one thing that you mentioned previously on a previous discussion that we had, and I felt like I really wanted to bring this up, is F&B optimization, but from a data perspective, of course, but also from that guest experience perspective. Now, you touched on it before, and I remember saying to you, I was like, we've never had anyone talk about F&B optimization in this space, or sorry, on this channel before. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit. If you could just tell us a bit about what you're seeing, what excites you about this space, all that sort of stuff.
Thanks for bringing this up, Tom, because it's if we look at Q4 2023 and Q1, when we talk, it's a trend amongst C-suite. really, really iconic brands and independent hotels where,
Yeah.
2023 was such a successful year in rooms. When it comes to
Yeah.
budget season, where am I going to get my growth from? So there are this real shift from rooms into F&B from a C-suite level of like, okay,
Right.
we really want to focus on our F&B. There's also quite a lot of confusion. What should my F&B be like? If I've
Yeah.
got 13 properties, do I standardize the menu across all properties? Do I have local? So again, let us know your comments, because I don't have the answers to this, but I
You
get
heard it, people.
a lot. Yes, let me know what your F&B strategy is in terms of menus. So I think there's definitely a focus inside our industry on F&B.
Right.
But what our data is telling us, again, on that sample size of 10,000, is that, and bearing in mind, this is looking at hotel reviews. This is not looking at restaurant reviews. So
Sure.
taking hotel reviews, F&B is the most spoken about concept. It has the largest review volume across the guest experience.
Wow. Okay. You'd think it. Yeah. Okay. You'd obviously think
You
it'd be
think
bedroom. Okay.
you think it'll be
Yeah.
room or cleanliness.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
and that, by the way, was not the case in 2019. So in
Okay.
2023, and it's I looked today, year to date, it's similar trends for 2024. F&B concepts, or everything to do with F&B in guest reviews from hotel pages counts for 14% of total mentions.
Wow. Again,
So
I guess it kind of makes sense in one point when you think about it, but you just would never think. I would
no,
never have thought that
no,
ever.
no. And bearing in mind, traditionally speaking, most successful, guest experience hotels come from a bed perspective. They
Mm.
put all
Yeah.
their focus in, the revenue pricing of the room, the quality of the room, the
Yeah.
cleanliness of the room, then the welcome experience at check-in. F&B, when we look at, in my 8 years here at Shiji Review Pro, I've spoke to more HR directors in 2022, 2023 in terms of
Yeah.
supporting recruitment than I have F&B directors. So I'm really interested to see, when is
Mm.
F&B going to really start focusing on how important they are in reputation in the guest experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we look at those 14% of mentions, there's so much room for room for improvement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let me get my slide up, because I don't want to get these stats wrong. It's important I get it right. Okay, so if you were to look at all mentions regarding room service in
Okay.
2023, what percentage would you say are positive?
Well, you'd like to think quite a high percentage,
What would you say? What was
but the
your
problem is reviews are usually negative.
They're not. They're not. That's not true.
Oh,
No, no,
oh,
that's always
a
a,
misconception,
a
is it?
misconception. That's what I'm looking for. No, reviews are more positive than negative.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
fair enough.
yeah. On average, yeah. So yeah,
Okay,
what
so
percentage?
what
I know.
percentage of
Yeah. Room
room
service.
service?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, 20%.
Okay. So when we look at food and drink as an overall category, so that includes everything from, the price of the cocktails to the quality of the menu, everything.
Right.
I'll start there. So
Yes.
76.3% of all F&B mentions
Right,
were
right, okay.
positive. Now, when we then drill down into, okay, what is everybody saying regarding room service?
Sure, sure.
What percentage would you say are positive? If 76% of all F&B mentions on online reviews are positive, what would you say with room service?
I don't know. I don't know.
52% are positive. So,
Really?
every time somebody says anything
So there's
regarding
so
room
much.
service, half of the time it's negative.
So much can be done on that room
So
service
much.
side.
So much can be done. And this is, like, I know we're talking about F&B, but it kind of represents all the areas of the guest experience from
Wow.
my opinion, because a lot of owners, a lot of C-suites, a lot of GMs, a lot of ops directors are focusing on the F&B experience, on the layout of the restaurant, the
Sure, sure.
you know, the ambience, the training, but it's like, you know, if you have room service, you probably, that's a good starting
That's
place.
that's a huge
Yeah,
amount.
yeah,
And for it to be such a, because
yeah.
you usually get, again, from a consumer perspective, you'll get a room service menu. But again, like do you know what it is? You always have this thing where you just accept that it's not going to be great.
I
You know what I
know.
mean? You
And
know what I
that's,
mean?
yeah, which is so sad that, and the difference is in 2000 and, you know, 22 for a 4-bedroom hotel, I might have been paying £220 a night.
Mm.
Now I'm paying
I was going to
380
say, good luck with
minimum.
that now.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm paying £500 a night. So my acceptance and my tolerance of room service is going to be a bad experience is so,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, 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 no. And it's the same as, you know, and that's where technology, you know, at Shiji, we have a product called digital dining and guest communications. And it's so
Okay.
successful because what's my tolerance for being in my bedroom, picking up the phone to order room service,
Yeah, yeah,
nobody answering. Okay, that
yeah.
might have flew. But now I'm like, this is totally, I'm just going to order Uber delivery. Like, this is
Well,
ridiculous.
this is what I was saying earlier. That clientele now, they
Mhm.
won't stand for it because it's
No,
all available to them there and then, right?
exactly, exactly. So it's kind of like if you want to,
Yeah,
you know, unless you've got that staff ratio of, you know, 3 staff to 1 guest, you have to look to technology to
yeah,
eliminate these really historic, sticky pain points in the guest journey.
yeah.
So to any hotelier that's out there that, you know, have a look at your room service experience, make small
Mm,
changes, and you're
yeah.
going to get a huge competitive advantage.
That's amazing. Like
Yeah, and menu is not
52%.
50%
What?
of positive mentions. Menu is not as bad, but still, all mentions regarding menu is
Yeah,
60% positive. 60.2% of menus are
right,
positive.
right.
So again, like where, you know, we see it as consumers and in the news, like you know, the rise of intolerances, the, you know,
Mm,
the health awareness of you are what you eat. But it's like, you know, you ask hotels, have you changed your menus? That don't come from the F&B kind of focus point.
sure, sure.
They've had, okay, the same seasonal menu change, but the same kind of offering for the last 3 years. Well,
Yeah,
that's not matching the changes that what we're seeing on, you know, at guest level in terms of the actual menu offering itself.
yeah.
Um,
If
yeah,
if there were, say, if if the hoteliers are watching at the moment, if there were
yeah,
three things that could be done, pretty much immediately to look at their F&B offering and how to enhance or how to improve it. If there were
yeah.
three main things that they would look at, what would you say they are?
First of all, look at what the guests are saying about
Yeah,
it, because the chances are the F&B director might not know. Maybe they have a score, but actually get
sure.
comfortable with what they're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
The second is kind of have a cause, you know, put the dotted line of cause and resolutions. I can give you an example. One of
Sure.
the clients I was talking to last week, you know, huge issue in F&B, predominantly coming from breakfast. Why? The reason was that actually in the budget, they didn't get the second chef. So that was having a huge
Right.
issue in how, you know, and how the orders were coming out to the kitchen. Therefore, guests are complaining because they're waiting for their a la carte breakfast that they've been sold to, is why it's £30, for example. So
Sure,
I
sure.
think, you know, connecting those dots of like, if you have staff shortages, it's really important that when you take that to your GM or take that to your owners or your investors, that you can paint and, you know, the dotted line back to, and this is why my guest experience is bad. And until this
Yeah.
happens, I'm going to continue getting 50% of negative mentions regarding my F&B.
Yeah.
And you're benchmarking against your competitors, which you should be. If you're looking at your guest experience, you should be understanding your comp set. Use
Yeah.
that in the meeting to paint that picture, you know,
Yeah.
to really justify staff levels. And if, same as back to the lift example, if you don't have the staff shortage resources fixed, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like how do you engage other departments to support you? So when you're being checked in at the hotel, how can the receptionist help alleviate that pain issue, you know,
Mm,
of, okay, you know, the bar's a bit busy tonight, so, you know, here's a voucher for you to come back for a free lunch tomorrow instead. So
sure.
And then the third point is technology, leverage technology, mobile
Yeah.
ordering. Even we have a product at Shiji called Digital Stay, the ability to check in and check out online.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Even a solution like that operationally can help monitor your flow in your hotel. So,
Yeah.
let's say you come and check in, Tom, and it's a Tuesday morning and my bar's dead, but your room's not ready. I've checked you in and I can say, hey, Tom, whilst your room's not ready, come in and have a free drink, hoping then
Yeah.
that you upsell. But let's say you check in another week and I've just had a group booking come in and the bar and the
Yeah.
lobby's busy. I can say, okay, Tom, come back tonight. So it really is kind of like bringing all departments together to support that F&B focus, whether it is changing the menu, whether it is communicating, or whether it is filling the gap of staff shortage.
Sure. Sure.
There's huge growth potential, and I'm really hoping that those negative mentions, are going to start to improve, because
Yeah.
if it accounts for 14% of all of my guest experience mentions, is really important. The whole business is putting focus on that part of the guest experience.
I think we need to put together a panel discussion on the channel with yourself, maybe a couple of hoteliers,
Yeah.
talking about this specific point, because I think you're right. Well, you're clearly right. You're clearly passionate about this, but you've got the data again to back it up.
Yeah.
Is that these stats are showing that there is so much more to be done, but therefore so much more money to be made. There's
Yes.
so much being left on the table. Excuse
Yeah.
the pun. But
Yeah.
there is, right?
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And I suppose coming on to then, so what do you see the future? What do you see in the future? And if you were a
Yeah.
crystal ball for guest experience,
Yeah.
what are you looking at? Again, what are you getting excited about? What are you looking for?
Yeah. So for the last decade, and thanks for asking this, Tom, because for the last decade, I've really been entrenched in guest experience.
Yeah.
But now when I look at the future and my new role within Shiji and really understanding, other solutions that aren't, just about the guest experience, when we look at,
Sure.
the PMS world and the POS world, like what we're doing at Shiji Enterprise with our product, Shiji Enterprise Platform, which is our own PMS, and what we're doing with guest profiles
Yeah.
and what that looks like in terms of guest preferences, having a singular guest marketing approach.
Mm-hmm.
I am like, woohoo, finally, I've got my marketing, I've got my guest experience, and now I've got the technology. And I, as a consumer, have very different hats on how I want to experience a hotel.
Yeah.
So I think, and then throw AI into the mix. It's so exciting. But I think there is a lot of challenges
Yeah.
I think the 5-star market will do fine because they have the resources, they have the luxury,
Yeah.
to really sit back, strategize, and really understand, okay, this is Danica. This is, when she stays at property A, this is how she wants her pillows. When she stays at property B, this is what she wants. She wants to have the deluxe suite, look in the canal in Amsterdam. Whereas in London, she wants the basement because she's traveling on corporate and she wants sleep. But my concern is, for the other mid-market size chains
Yeah.
or independent hotels that are still, I'm a GM, I'm still cleaning the rooms, I'm still doing meetings and events, I'm still jumping into revenue, I'm still pushing for investment and how are they going to have the time to understand, okay, what does the future guest look like?
Yeah.
My guest experience, and what I expect is getting more and more complicated.
Yeah.
I went away. This is a pure example. I'm based in Barcelona, and last weekend it was a long bank holiday weekend. So
Sure.
on the Saturday, I went away. We had stayed in a hotel night with my girlfriends. It was super cool. We had dinner, bed, breakfast, spa, massage, amazing. Then on
Nice.
the next day, I went with my husband and my kids, and we went camping, and we stayed in like a glamping tent. If you
Mm-hmm.
looked at those two guest experiences, they couldn't be any different, but they were
Sure.
24 hours apart. So super exciting as a guest that I can experience all of these different things, but as an accommodation provider,
Yeah.
How do you capture my preference?
Yeah.
How do you market me my preference? And how do you then operationally deliver them without annoying me? You know, like,
There's that balance, isn't there? There's that constant balance.
yeah, yeah. So this is another question for you, Tom, which another mind-blowing statistic.
Yeah, go on.
A one night stay in Amsterdam city centre hotel booked on
Mhm.
booking.com at an
Yeah.
average daily rate of 80 euros. But
Wow.
how many touch points, so between the hotel, booking.com, vendors like Review Pro that would send out the post-stay survey or whoever it might be, how many
Right.
touch points in that guest journey do you think that guest receives on average for a
Okay.
one night stay?
Okay. I'm gonna say so all the different things involved.
Pre-stay email, booking confirmation, the
I'm gonna
whole
say
shebang.
I'm gonna say probably quite optimistically 5.
28.
What?
28.
Sorry,
Yes,
hold on. Email.
28. If you think about it,
You're probably getting upset.
the upset. Yeah, and this is the
Is
exact
that is
thing.
that is that post as well? Is that
And
post
that's
experience?
post as well. That's post as well. Yeah.
I said
So
I just said
it's
I would have
crazy.
said top 7.
I
Top
know, I
7.
know, I know. But that's so interesting they say that because 28, half of those have gone to your email that you're not even reading. So when we look at
You're right. You're right because
it,
most people are just like, yeah, whatever. If it's not a confirmation, or if
yeah,
it's not an invoice, or if it's
yeah,
not, it might be an upsell where I'm thinking that looks quite cool.
yeah.
Otherwise, I don't care. Yeah,
No,
you're right.
exactly. So at Shiji, we have a product called guest communication. So we can now proactively or reactively talk to you on WhatsApp, for example.
Yeah,
Super
yeah,
cool. Can check in on WhatsApp. The challenge is, okay, what's the best time to send a WhatsApp message to you to check in? If you're
yeah,
corporate, it might be 8 a.m. If I'm a mother with my 2 young babies, don't send me a message at 8 a.m. to check out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this is like the unknown. So it's like, okay, we have the technology available to us
Mm,
hoteliers, but trying to get that strategy, trying to understand like, okay, what is that right conversion? What is
mhm.
that right sweet point is unknown because it's all new.
Is there I know obviously the usual answer will be as little as possible, but is there a sweet spot in terms of those touch points or
Testing and
not?
trialing. No, it really depends on.
Okay.
And this is where, and I'm not in sales, so I can comfortably and confidently say this, both as a tech vendor and as a hotelier.
Yeah.
This is where finding the right partner in your technology stack is
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
Because nobody, when we start looking at real-time communication, when we start looking at, being able to upsell you in my guest, throughout the guest experience, do you know in 2022 and 2023 how many upsell packages resulted in negative reviews? Because operationally, the housekeeping couldn't deliver the champagne package that was sold to
Ah,
me. So it's
right.
really important that when you look at your vendor, you choose a partner. So at Shiji, we share these best practices. We
Yeah.
help strategize, and they are so individual. And a lot of it, is still unknown. So it is about testing, trialing, sharing best practices, and
Yeah.
going on that journey together.
Yeah.
No right answer at the moment. So that sweet spot, no, there is no
No. I guess
correct
yeah,
answer.
it's and it'll be relative to the property, I guess, as well, which is fair.
Yeah, and
But it's
relative
like
to the rate that you've paid. If if,
true.
if I've
Yeah.
paid £2,000 a night, I'm
Yeah.
definitely interested in talking. If I've paid 50 euros for a one night stay, don't talk to me.
Yeah, just yeah, I've got yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was I was gonna say as well, because that comes back to the point that you made from if we look at the upsell perspective anyway, you're basically from a tech perspective, you're in a great place, you're upselling, you've got the person bought into it and all the rest of it. But from an on-property operations perspective, if you're not able to fulfill that to the standard in which the person
yeah,
as the expectation of it, that upsell opportunity that was really, really great and at the front end really
yeah,
brilliant,
yeah,
but but at the back end then results in an awful review.
Yeah,
Oh, I got sold this or whatever, and I was really looking forward to it because it was a special occasion.
yeah.
Wanted this champagne and strawberry covered in chocolate, whatever, and
And it
the
never
strawberries were
arrived.
warm. Yeah, the strawberries were warm. The champagne was in a bucket without any ice in it, and there was a
Uh-huh.
glass with a smudge on it or something.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same. That's why, if I was to ever be back onto the hotel side, like closing the gap between operations and commercial teams, so vital. Like when
yeah.
you putting together these upsell packages or initiatives, you have to include your head of housekeeping, you have to include your
Mm.
operations team.
Usually they're the last ones to hear
They're
about
the
it.
last, exactly. And they only heard about it because the guests complained. And so that's what we saw in 2022, 2023. But then
Yeah,
also, like we were talking earlier, Tom, this concept of bringing it back to the basic, like you can give me the best ancillary revenue strategy, but if my bed was not clean,
yeah,
I'm not going to pay for the package that you sold me. I'm not going to pay for my room, and you're going to get a negative review.
yeah. So sometimes I think that notion, I think, is in its purest form of hospitality: good bed, good shower,
Yeah,
half decent breakfast.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're
But
sweet.
this is, and I'm sure there's probably some hoteliers listening going, "Oh, it's so easy for you, Danica, to say that." And that's my point. Like hoteliers to be successful in Q3, Q4, and as we enter 2025, they have to wear all of these hats. Like you have
Yeah,
to have your
yeah,
operational hat on and your revenue and commercial hat on, and let alone your profit and cost. So
yeah,
it's the lines, and it's really difficult. Plus, you're operating in the unknown. We don't know what
yeah,
conversions are going to look like. We don't know what AI is going to do in terms of the booking process, in terms of reviews, guest expectations. So, but what we do know is it's a super exciting time.
yeah. Guest experience,
It's
the
so
Wild West,
exciting. The
the
Wild Wild
absolute
West.
Wild West of guest
Exactly.
experience, right?
Yeah,
That's
I
got to be the
may,
title of
yeah,
this. That's the
that
title. Yeah.
I might have been called in the past an excited puppy that's like she's waiting to be let out. This old dog is still the excited puppy, like can't wait for more because
Flying that flag. Flying
the
that
next
flag.
the next 6 months, let alone 24 months, are going to be very, very different
Yeah.
to what we've seen over the last 18 months.
Do you know what we should do? Catch up towards the end of this year or maybe
Yeah,
start of next year and
yeah,
see what is
yeah.
starting to change, what you've
We should
seen. Maybe
we
have a
should
look at
do
that
it
data again.
before, yeah, we should do it before the end of the year to help people set their strategies for the next year. And we should
Oh,
do it
let's do that.
in cowboy outfits for the Wild Wild West.
I love it.
But no, I would love to because it really does change. Like even when I was looking today at my stats, whilst I said
Mm,
Booking and Google 70% in 2023 of total reviews,
yeah,
when you look at Q1 and year to date 2024,
yeah,
Google's growth in review volume is insane. So I'm really
really.
interested to start to see, okay, what's that going to look like in 6 months'
Right.
time? Google versus Booking versus TripAdvisor. Expedia's growth, they've had a lot of growth. So, everybody, I recommend you downloading the Shiji guest experience benchmark report. It's a fantastic, really
Can we
cool.
link that in? Can we link that below?
Yes, I will.
Okay, cool. Then
Yeah,
for anybody
definitely.
watching this point in the episode, you'll see the link down below for
Yeah,
that benchmark. Cool.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Danica, thank you so much for taking some time out of your incredibly busy schedule. I know that how incredibly busy you are, traveling here, there, and everywhere. But again, constantly flying that flag for the guest experience side of things. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Tom. And what you're doing, I've been a fan of, we met at WTM and I said to you, I've been following you and been a fan of you. And you're like the Steve Bartlett for us.
No, I'm not
I
taking that
love
one.
it. I love it. I love it. Soon we're going to have like the advertisements in
Oh, that's it, the whole lot.
so yeah, and thank you very much. Yeah, and if anybody is interested in talking about guest experience strategies,
Yeah.
you know where I am. I could talk about it all day long.
Well, what I'll do then, so for anybody that's got to this point of the episode, I will
Well
pop
done for
Danica's
listening
details.
this long.
Yeah. I think this has been great. But for anyone that wants to find out more from Danica, I have no
Yeah,
doubt that she would love to connect with you on
yeah,
LinkedIn. Please do drop her a message. I know that she'd love to talk to any hoteliers, any leaders out there that are looking to
yeah,
talk about their guest experience side of things. But of course, any of the other products that Shiji do offer.
yeah.
So don't hesitate to get in touch with Danica. Please do like this video, comment down below your experiences from a guest experience perspective, or if you've ever sort of experienced that, having to be creative in your role to obviously optimize where possible or create that amazing guest experience where you can with the budgets that you've got. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We are trying to bring you some fantastic content every single week with guests just like Danica. And to do that, we need a fantastic community around us, and that's growing every single month. So please do be part of that. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.